Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition to the Point Podcast. Everybody's doing well on this Christmas Eve. We are just one sleep away from the big guy coming down and bringing gifts to all the kids out there. And we are two sleeps away from the World Junior Hockey Championships kicking off in Edmonton and Red Deer, Alberta. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be a World Junior preview show. There were two games televised yesterday on TSN, pre-tournament games featuring Team Finland against the United States, the defending champions. And then we had Russia play Canada, which was a rematch of last year's semifinal. And, there's a lot of great players in this tournament. And, before we go on about every team, I got some notes about every team, players to watch, different things. But I think something, and this is just as much a reminder for me as it is for everybody else. They're kids. They're nine. It's a 120 tournament. It's a 19-year-olds tournament. That's how it's described. But just think like a 19-year-old. People think I'm young and I'm 23. These guys are just figuring out life. Not even really figuring. Many people would argue I haven't figured out life. Maybe none of us have figured out life in the last 2 years with all this COVID bullshit. But we got to remember that a lot of these guys aren't going to make the NHL. They aren't going to be superstars. Now, there are famous moments that you'll never forget. Jordan Eberle scoring with 7.8 seconds left. Evgeny Kuznetsov celebrating up 5-1 going past the Canadiens bench in 2011. You'll never forget that. Mika Zibanejad scoring the golden goal in overtime in Sweden to defeat Russia, which oddly enough was the last time Sweden won a gold medal at this tournament, despite their dominance over the preliminary round over the last decade in this tournament. But, there are players that make it, but just as many, they'll have their cup of coffee, they'll have their run, and this tournament might be the best thing that they get. But this tournament is so special because you get to play for your country. You get to play for the gold medal, for nations like Canada, like the United States, obviously Austria. It's a different kind of experience for Germany, but there's always good stories that come out of it. And with the news this week that the NHL players aren't going to the Olympic Games, I've said this from the beginning, and I'm sure it wasn't a popular opinion of my listeners, but I don't need the NHL players to go to the Olympics. It's not something like I like this tournament better than I like the Olympics, because something we also have to remember, the Olympics is not a hockey tournament. We make it because in North America, hockey is the biggest thing, in Canada at least. But, there's curling, there's, to my dismay, figure skating, there's lots of other events that quite frankly hold more weight to people than hockey. And there's the women's team going. Again, that's more important. It's more important to grow the women's game than the NHL players going over and hogging all the spotlight from the women that probably deserve the opportunity, deserve the floor more than the men do, quite frankly. So with all that being said, just an update on me. I've been talking all week about how, I was supposed to go to the World Junior Tournament, and then it got reduced to 50%, and then it was up in the air if I was going to be able to go. Well, we got word last night via email that we are part of the 50%. So Sawyer Hanna, check out his social channels, he is partnering with the tournament. So, a heartfelt congratulations to Sawyer. He's a hardworking guy. He was nice enough to ask me to tag along with him. I wouldn't be going if it wasn't for him. And, honestly, he supported me on this podcast. He was on last week, but, he just, for him growing up in the game to get to partner with such a special tournament with, Hockey Canada, with the IIHF, kudos to him. And I think it's gonna be awesome to see the players repping Country Liberty in Alberta, and hopefully we see some fans rocking the apparel as well. But yeah, just congratulations to him, and you can find his posts on the Country Liberty Facebook, Instagram, wherever you find your content for Country Liberty, Sawyer Hannah's page personally, or on the Country Liberty pages, to see what he's doing with the tournament, and you can find all the details there. But yeah, so on Boxing Day, we'll be flying out and we're going to be able to view all the games. So like I said, I'm going to be taking my mic, my equipment with me. We'll be doing some podcasts from my hotel room out there, talking about the games of the day, the players, what I really like, obviously. And, predominantly Canada, but again, I'm going to be watching that group. So watching the Finns, watching the Czechs. And, I still have a TV, and I'll be checking out the Russians, United States, every other team you believe it. I'll be, for that period of time, it's going to be my job to basically watch college football bowl games and watch the World Junior Hockey Championship. So stay tuned for that. Let's start close to home, Team Canada. And this Canadian team, every year, it's a cliche to say this team is loaded, but last year was loaded, and there's so many players that I think can have a massive impact on this tournament, on Canada winning a gold medal, quite frankly. But I'm going to start with a guy who, made his impact felt last night, and he's going to be a key offensive contributor. And I think he's one of the two most important forwards on this team, and that would be Mason McTavish. And Mason McTavish was the third overall pick selected by the Anaheim Ducks of this past year's draft. He had scored 2 NHL goals this season, including his NHL debut. They played him 7 games. He did not get to the entry-level kicker. And in late November, they sent him back to Peterborough to finish out the season. He's still very young, and they didn't want to burn off a year of his eligibility when it comes to his entry-level contract. So he's going to be playing for Canada. And you just look at McTavish, and this is really, when you're a third overall pick, I think they saw him and they said, this kid is physically mature. And at the NHL level, I still think he's got something to blossom, still got to put on some muscle mass. But you look last night, this tournament, he's going to go into corners, he's going to come away with pucks. That's the easiest way to put it. He has all the flash. He's an underrated passer, and he can finish, along the net. But what I really like about him is his truculence. He's a guy that, playing against young defensemen, playing against, nations like a Czech Republic or a Sweden, where, normally these players in the NHL, they're not big men. Thomas Holmstrom, for, a Swedish guy, is an anomaly. So is Nick Kronwall. We look at the defensemen that have dominated this tournament when it comes to Sweden. You look at a guy like Rasmus Dahlin. You look at Toronto's own Rasmus Sandin. These guys are finesse players. They're not girth. They're not, coming at you with, with teeth, so to speak. So I think McTavish, when it comes to that, is a perfect two-way power forward, but also has the gift and has the ability to finish along the net. And, the guy that's going to be key for his success is Kent Johnson. And I think Johnson, I hadn't watched him play much prior to last night. I know he was drafted high, goes to the University of Michigan with Owen Power, who we'll talk about on Canada's back end. But he's a special talent. You can see why he went so high in the draft. His ability to see players, to me, he's your power play specialist. He's a guy that might not finish this tournament with 8 goals, but he might have 12 assists. And, you saw a goal last night where Jake Neighbors made a pass to New Brunswick's own Luca Cormier to a wide open net on the power play. I like Kent Johnson in that position below the goal line where he can see the whole ice, because he can get the puck to the middle of the ice in the power play to a McTavish. He can see a guy like Caden Gooley on the back end, or a Luca Cormier on the second power play unit. But I like he is so offensively creative, and I truly think he'll be the most impactful player when it comes to creating offense. And while McTavish, I think, is likely going to be the best finisher on this team when it comes to scoring goals, I think Kent Johnson can be, the Paul Kariya to McTavish's, Teemu Selanne, if you will. Obviously, the two, I look at these two and I just say, Johnson is so creative. He's great with the puck. I didn't think his play when he doesn't have the puck is extremely well. He comes back, he defends, and I like his play. And you look at the lines, he's playing with McTavish, of course, and with Maverick Bourque, who's a Cuban JHL player. Bourque, I look at him on this line. You have your two horses. For Bourque, just get, this is simplistic, but go get the puck. Be that guy. And he's kind of a pain in the ass type player. I think he'll draw some penalties. And that's going to be his role. He'll tap in a goal for sure playing with these two guys. I mean, you look at around the league, you play with a McDavid, you play with a Draisaitl, you're going to get offense because you're playing with elite talent. You guys who jump on the line with Braden Point and with Kucherov, Andre Palat is not exactly the most skilled player ever. He was a 7th round draft pick, but he benefits and he got better from playing with really good players. And he's, he looks like a good player. So that's listed as the second line. That was the second line last night. I think it's their best line. I don't think it's that close. I mean, the first line is Shane Wright with Cole Perfetti, and excuse me. Shane Wright is the interesting one. This is going to be a pressure tournament for him because he's eligible to be drafted this year. He's projected to go first overall. And I didn't think he played it that well last night. I didn't really notice him. So I think he left a lot to be desired. I mean, it's his first game. These guys haven't played in 3 weeks. So, but we remember the tournament before Lafreniere got drafted. He had a great tournament. He dominated the tournament. And that's something, I think when it's your draft year, when you're that high and you get to play at this tournament, when you're a youngster like a Shane Wright, you want to make an impression because you're playing against some really good people. And, I think conversely, Owen Power, who was drafted first overall last year, it's the first time since Eric Johnson that the first overall pick of the previous draft is playing in this tournament. And, he obviously decided not to play for Buffalo this year. He went back to University of Michigan. So to get potentially 3 first-round picks on this roster in the coming years, it tells you how deep Canada is. But I think for Shane Wright, he's playing with a guy like Cole Perfetti. And Cole Perfetti is a returning player, assistant captain on this team, has been playing all season with the Manitoba Moose, the AHL farm team of the Winnipeg Jets. And Perfetti's offensively creative. He's got a great shot off the half wall. I think he'll be, I wouldn't surprise me. I mentioned Johnson and McTavish. If Perfetti led this tournament in goals, I wouldn't be surprised because he's got a great release. He's going to be in that, quote unquote office, so to speak. I think he's going to get his looks from that slot. So Perfetti's definitely a dangerous player when it comes to what he can do. And then you look around, you got the third line, Jake Neighbors, Ridley Gregg, and Sordif. I think Neighbors, I think this line is going to be, I look at it like the Tampa Bay third line last year of Coleman, Goodrow, and Yanni Gourde. And they are more, I'd say they have more, high-end skill than that line. But, Ridley Gregg is a fantastic player in the WHL. But he's also, you look at him, he's got some bite. And he's not afraid to get to those dirty areas. Neighbors, we saw I mentioned his pass to Luca Cormier on his goal last night. He's offensively creative. Blake Coleman is like that. And Sordif can be that Barclay Goodrow who goes into the corners, comes away with pucks, ferocious around the net. I think this line will be a really big, there's no weakness on this team. When you look at the fourth line, Dylan Guenther has been ripping up the WHL. Elliot Denoyer is the captain of the Halifax Mooseheads. He's having a really good season for Halifax. So, and then obviously the 13th forward last night is a 16-year-old kid who's projected to be the first overall pick next year, and that would be Connor Bedard. And, he's 16, and I'm interested to see how, the head coach of Team Canada, Dave Cameron, who is a PEI native, how he uses Bedard, because he scores a goal last night, but it's the pre-tournament and he's the 13th forward right now. And I look and I say, well, do I see him surpassing Perfetti? No. Do I see him surpassing Kent Johnson? No. But I look at guys like, well, Jake Neighbors is a good player, as is Ridley Gregg, but could he get some spot shifts with these lines? Yes. And what I think is you got to see how he plays, but you don't want to overthink it if you're the head coach, because they didn't use McDavid when he played. You could make an argument when McKinnon was there, he was an afterthought. I think they can play, and it's just using, and you see other nations that lack skill, they're forced to play their youngsters. Like I remember seeing Tim Stützle, his first tournament at the World Juniors, and I said, okay, this kid can play. You knew he was wearing his cage, he was young, but you knew this guy was going to be a really, really good NHL player. A really good prospect. And it honestly helps prospects in this tournament to play for a lesser nation, because you're given more of that opportunity. We've seen really good players from Russia not get that opportunity. You could argue it's because, former coach Valery Bragin refused to play them. But Stützle came to mind, Moritz Seider, another German player who I think might win Rookie of the Year this year in the NHL. He had it. Nico Hischier is another guy that comes to mind in recent memory. You get an opportunity as a youngster when you play for a nation that doesn't have a whole lot of talent. And I want to see how Cameron uses Bedard. And I'll say this. I think Canada is going to win their group. I watched the Finns yesterday. I think they're a good team, but they're not, 2016 Finland where they won, they won the gold medal because they had Aho, they had Puljujärvi, they had Patrick Laine. They had their best team that's ever been assembled, you could argue. And, they won gold. They're not that team. They do have some players that we'll talk about that I really like. That's a few returning players, guys that I think can have a big impact for them to see if they can make some noise in this year's tournament, potentially medal. But, the Czechs, again, they have a lot of returning players. They have some interesting players. I don't think they'll be good enough to surpass Canada. But I'll say for Connor Bedard, I would be surprised if he's not playing a top 9 role by at least the medal round, because I think he's too good not to. There's another player for Russia I'm going to talk about that is going to be compared to Bedard, and they'll play in next year's tournament because neither of them can be drafted until 2023. But, they both score a goal last night. They both have an impact. But don't overthink this. Play Bedard. He's a good player. Just because he's younger than the rest of your players does not mean that you shouldn't play him. And I think coaches sometimes get into their own head too much, and it's just, it's sitting right in front of you. Make the correct decision. And we'll see what Dave Cameron decides to do, but I don't think Connor Bedard will be a 13th forward by the time this tournament is over. Switching to the back end. Owen Power, I watched last night, and if you're looking for flash, if you're looking for burning end-to-end speed, Owen Power is not your guy. He's not a Cale Makar. He's not, neither is Caden Gooley, quite honestly. Luca Cormier is likely the closest to those type guys, the way he plays. I don't think he'll be doing that in this tournament because he's not Makar yet anyway. But I look at Owen Power and my comparison, and he's not this player yet, but I do think the way his body type is, the way he skates, I think he's extremely smart. And that's Victor Hedman. I look at Power and I just say, what does he do wrong out there? He's for such a big kid, he skates extremely well. He's smart. He'll block shots. He's in the right position all the time. And if you just watch Hedman, if you're looking, like I say, if you're looking for flash, don't watch Tampa Bay or watch, Mikhail Sergachev's shifts. But Hedman just goes out there and he's in one postseason, he scored 10 goals, but it wasn't because he was, going end to end against people. It's because he was smart. He moves into the play. He realizes when his opportunity is there. It's having that confidence to do that. And I look at Power, And I think Buffalo's got a really good pick. I think, they draft him first overall. He should be, but that's my player comp. I think it's Victor Hedman. And will he ever be Victor Hedman? Who knows? I mean, Victor Hedman likely go down as one of the best defensemen ever. I mean, he's already got 2 cups. We're at the pause here in the NHL season. Who could believe it? Tampa has the most points right now. After all the players they lost, they're in a division with Toronto, the mighty Maple Leafs in Florida, and they still have more points, and they played the same amount of games as all of them. So that tells you how good that team is. But, I think Owen Power is, so I look at him as Hedman. I think he's going to play a ton. They mentioned it last night on the broadcast that he played over 10 minutes at last year's World Hockey Championship in the gold medal game in the third period. He played 10 minutes and 35 seconds of that third period to win gold for Canada. I think he'll play 27 minutes a night, maybe more, especially when it comes to later in the tournament. He's going to play a ton. Him and Gouli should play a lot of minutes. Gouli, similar. I think Gouli is a guy that can have some more offensive creativity, but Gouli's more of the, I'm going to be here. I'm going to make the right play. I can get the puck out of the zone. And something I like from Canada is their breakouts last night. For a team that played their first game together, I thought their breakouts were extremely strong. You saw defensemen throw it around to a forward. You had your center to pick it up. It's out of the zone quickly and not a big problem. I mean, last night their 5-on-5 play was really impressive. It's the penalties that they're taking that were the big problem and what would be concerning for me if I was Dave Cameron or Hockey Canada for that matter. But I think Gouli and Power are obviously your 2 most important defensemen. I looked at Zellweger last night. He's played with Power. He concerns me. Against the first game I've seen him play, he was kind of a turnover machine last night. He liked to give it to the opposition, just to be matter of fact about it. He turned the puck over a ton. I thought he was loose with the puck. So that concerns me with him playing with Power, playing in the top D pair. Sabrango, I think, is a good, I think he could, obviously, they're all left shot defensemen. So it really doesn't matter where you slot these guys. I like Sabrango a little bit more than Zellweger. Wouldn't be surprising to me to see him move up, potentially play with Power for the end of the tournament. But they have lots of options. That's the thing. And obviously, being a New Brunswicker, it's great to see Luca Cormier playing at this tournament. And last night being a top 4 defenseman, he scores a power play goal, which is great to see. Good start for him. And this team, it's awesome for him because he should be on this team. He was a late cut last year, but you often don't see a lot of Q kids. You don't see a lot of New Brunswickers get opportunities. And hopefully he can, win a gold medal here, have a really good tournament, and then turn that into, a promising end to the season for Charlottetown, who currently lead the QMJHL in points and potentially go on a run to a Memorial Cup to close out his junior career. In net, this is a weakness for this team. And, last year, the goaltending was not exactly a strength either, but Devin Levi turned out to, a 7th round pick, turned out to be a stud in net. And, Dylan Guerin, I think, will be the starting goaltender to kick off this tournament. He played pretty well last night. And he signed his entry level contract with the New York Rangers yesterday. So congrats to him. But you see Sebastian Casa, he's behind him. He played half the game last night, but I do think Dylan Guerin will be the starting goalie for this team. We will see him. I think we'll see him in the first game against the Czech Republic. He is a returning goaltender, didn't get to play much last year, but he had the experience. He knows what it's like. And, we talked about it on the Olympics. Canada, when it comes to goaltending, it's not their strength right now. There's no Roberto Luongo. There's no Marty Berder. When we saw Carter Hart this tournament a number of years ago, we thought Carter Hart was going to be the next wave of goaltending. To be after Price, maybe Carter Hart could be the next Olympic great goaltender for Team Canada. We haven't seen that come through. This tournament has not bred elite goaltending. Hockey Canada has gave us McKinnon, gave us McDavid, gave us so many great players, but you look at in net, well, Spencer Knight was a high pick to Florida. He looks pretty good. Andrei Vasilevsky was a high pick to Russia. He looks pretty good. Obviously, we'll see Askarov in this tournament for Russia. He's had a couple poor World Juniors. Nashville took him in the first round. We'll see what he turns into. But yeah, goaltending has not been the strength for Canada, but Dylan Guerin will hope to grab the net and run the table for Canada and ultimately avenge what happened last year and come home with a gold medal following their loss to the United States last year in the gold medal game. But this team is very good. And one thing for Canada, it's strange because they win, they lose the tournament last year, but divisions are set up based on your standings, and Canada gets a much better division. You could argue that you'd want some tougher competition before the medal round, which I agree with. I'd prefer Canada to play US or play at Sweden before the medal round, because it's good to have that experience of playing that team. I think Finland will be a tough test, but they're not one of those teams. It's a very different game playing against a Finland because they play a different style. They muck it up. They have guys that'll they hit you. They're strong. They're on pucks. But like I said, I mentioned a few guys. I just said Zellweger was the player that really made me scratch my head last time. Like, hey, is he going to be there long term? But Canada should be one of the favorites to win this tournament. I'm sure the World Junior preview show tonight, Craig Button will have them winning it. But I do, we'll talk about here. There are some really good players on other teams and nations that I think can make it interesting as well. Let's stay in Canada's division. We'll talk about the team that they're playing on the first day, and that would be Team Czech Republic, or Czechia, as they want to be known as now. I don't know if they want to go back to Czechoslovakia, but that's what they want to be known for, so that's what I'm going to call them. And Czech Republic had their game against Switzerland postponed yesterday because a member of the Swiss team tested positive for COVID. So that was a great start to the tournament for I'm sure everybody involved. But you look at the Czech Republic, and the one thing you could say, last year's team was very young. They didn't have a lot of experience. They're bringing a lot of guys back, and not like past years, they're bringing a lot of Czech-born players playing in North America to this tournament. And a number of them here, you have goalie Jan Bednar, who's returning, who was the third-string goalie last year. He's a fourth-round pick of the Detroit Red Wings, currently playing for Acadie Bathurst in the QMJHL. So he's a guy playing in North America. He's had a lot of experience over here. Jan Mysak, who is playing in the Ontario Hockey League for Hamilton. He was the captain last year. He's returning as the captain this year as a 19-year-old. He was a third-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. He's a guy, he's a centerman that can have an impact for this team. I think this is already his third tournament. If this Czech team is going to be successful, Mysak, I believe, he's played 10 games. He's got 5 points. He needs to be more of a factor. You need to see him every game. I remember watching him last year, and I said, well, he's the captain. I don't notice him. Normally, even for nations that lack talent, the captain is, of course, it's normally the best player. It's not that these coaches aren't that creative when they give their leadership core. It's just, okay, who's my best player? Let's throw the C on him. Well, Mysak did not have that impact for the Czech Republic. He's a year older. He's playing in the Ontario Hockey League. He's having a very good season for Hamilton. So we'll see what kind of impact he has this year, if he's motivated to kind of have a really strong end to his World Junior career, a World Junior Championship career, after being a little lackluster in his first 2 appearances. Then there's this player who is not drafted yet, surprisingly, and he's got a weird name. His name is Ivan. And I'm sure from Q fans, this name will make some sense, because this guy's played for the Acadie Bathurst. He then got traded to Cape Breton, and he's over a point per game player in the QMJHL, but he's still undrafted. And we've seen players come in this tournament. They've had great seasons. And they end up getting a contract, or they get drafted following a really good season. He's a guy that's been playing in the Q from the Czech Republic, has come over, played in North America for a long time. I think he is a guy that could be an underrated player for the Czech Republic in this tournament because he scores a ton in the queue. You know, he's a guy that just finds the back of the net. He's offensively creative. And for these lesser nations, it's not about, it's about finding offense. You're going to have your checking forwards. You're going to have guys that, you know, can play that style. It's about game breakers for these nations who can step up and really make an impact. This year, he's got 18 goals and 12 assists in 29 games. That's 30 points in 29, over a point per game. And last year, obviously he's 19. He's from Ostrava, Czech Republic. He only had 22 points in 62 games last year. So that tells you how big of a jump he's having already this season. But he's a 19. It's his last year. And, you know, maybe after a strong season for Cape Breton, we see him, you know, really turn this into a great day for himself. This defenseman, David Spacek, he's a guy, he plays for Sherbrooke in the QMJHL as well. And you see a lot of Czech players, they come and play in the Q opposed to the W or the OHL. Spacek is a fun player to watch. He's going to be a guy, he's got a good, he's really fast. He's got good burst. I think he can be a guy that really has an impact for the Czech Republic on the back end. We want somebody, and for these nations as well, these guys are going to play a ton of minutes. I mentioned Owen Power. Spacek will play just as much as these guys because he's gonna play a ton of minutes and likely 27 to 30 a game. And, you know, he's again playing for Sherbrooke. He's got, in his last 10 games, he's got 5 points, and he's a good player. He's a guy that I think will have an impact on this team for sure. And he's draft eligible this year, so a player to watch there as well. There's also Michael Croutil. He's playing for the Rockford Ice Hogs in the AHL. He's a defenseman to keep your eye on. But again, the Czech Republic, I believe, have 11 returning players from last year's team. So that's something you can, you know, these guys have at least played together in a tournament. They know what this is like. So it's not a youngster team coming in where they're all upstarts. They don't know what they're doing. I don't think, obviously, for guys like Mishak, Bednar, they've been here. They know what it's like to play Canada. But I think part of the mindset for these lesser nations is if you go and play in Canada, you can't have if you're Austria, okay, yes, it's going to be tough to say, yeah, we can go beat Canada. But if you're Czech, you shouldn't just go and defeat it. You need to go in and say, you know what, we can play a competitive game against this team. We can make it interesting. Maybe we have a goalie that steps up, plays fantastic, and we stay in the game. But Czech Republic are in Canada's group. I think they'll be competing with the likes of Finland, Germany, and for that second spot, and we'll see what comes out of it. That brings us to Team Germany, and Germany they had their year last year where they had a great run. They made it interesting. They lost in the bronze medal game. Getting all the way to the semifinal, upsetting a number of teams along the way. But it's gonna be a tough year for them to do what they did last year. And that is because they're missing a ton of guys that had fantastic tournaments last year. And you look, there's no Tim Stützle this year. There's no JJ Peterka. There's no Lucas Reichel. There's no Morris Seider. You know, for Stützle, for Seider, they're playing in the NHL right now. John Peterka is playing in the AHL for Buffalo. Reichel, same for the Carolina Hurricanes. So they have, these guys are not playing this season. You're missing their three of the top 4 point getters, and I think the best rookie defenseman, maybe the best rookie player in the National Hockey League right now in Moritz Seider. Florian Elias will return for this team. He was 8th in tournament scoring last year. He was playing, alongside those guys. But Germany's a young team. They don't have a lot of experience. They don't have those high-end scores that they did last year. Tim Stützle made an impact as a 17-year-old. Then when he came back last year, surprisingly, because of the pandemic, there was no NHL, there was no AHL available. He wasn't playing. So they sent him to this tournament, and he started playing fantastic. He was playing, looked unbelievable in this tournament, had a strong rookie season. He's regressed a little bit this year in Ottawa. He's starting to find his game a little bit more as the team does. They went through their injuries and COVID problems, but he's a star. I mentioned Sider. I mean, the guy I think he's the future of the NHL when it comes to the back end. I think he can win a Norris Trophy before his career is over. I think he'll win Rookie of the Year. Potentially Lucas Raymond will win it. His teammate might win it this year in Detroit. But again, Germany is always a nation that Germany always plays Canada tough. They always just seem to, even when they have so much less skill, they seem to make it a difficult test for Canada. Last year was an aberration when Canada just destroyed Germany in the preliminary round. But Germany, I think they lost 16-3 or something like that. They rebounded from that and really took that on the chin and made it personal that they have a great tournament. And guys like the leaders of that team, Stützle, Peterka, came out and played tough the rest of the tournament. But I don't expect Germany to be as good as they were last year, just because they lost a lot of that talent. And for a small nation, you need time to regroup and kind of bring back a strong roster. The same can be said for Austria. They don't have their captain, Marco Rossi, from last year. He went 9th overall to Minnesota a few years ago. He's playing in the AHL right now. I'm just glad he's playing hockey. He went through a really tough health scare where he was out of action for a long time. He had to go back to Austria, deal with that. He wasn't playing hockey for a lot last year. But Austria finished last year, but there was no relegation because of the pandemic, and they didn't want to do that. So they're still in the top group, and they're in the top group for the first time in their country's history. So kudos to them. Some players to look out for. They have a 17-year-old. Again, small nations. You get a youngster, maybe they make an impact and they shine. 17-year-old Marco Casper, draft eligible. He's got 9 points in 20 games in the Swedish Hockey League as a 17-year-old. So he's a guy that scouts really like. They think he'll be a first-round pick likely this year. Also, Matthias Baum is another guy that they see getting drafted this year. So Austria, it would surprise me if they're not relegated, but to see a guy like Marco Casper play, it's a good platform for him, and potentially launch that into a good draft pick for a team in this coming July. Then we'll go to Finland, and when it comes to Canada's group, and Finland is interesting for a number of reasons. But if you watch that game yesterday, they have players coming back that are really, really interesting. And one is Tope Nima. And this will excite Maple Leaf fans because he won defenseman of the tournament last year, and he's back for another year. And he's really their anchor on the back end. He's a guy that's going to be a quarterback of their power play. He'll be on the ice in key situations. And I expect him to have a big tournament again. Again, he won it last year. So one top tournament last year. And I think he'll again be a guy that has an impact. You also look at their back end. Emi Viro, he plays in La Liga for TPS Turku. He's a Detroit draft pick. He's a guy for me that is just a solid defender. He can make creative plays, but I view him as just a shutdown guy. He's your Ryan McDonough. He's a guy that just he erases problems for this Finnish team, and he's also got a big body. Finland, they don't have a top goaltender. That's something that they really talked about yesterday in the broadcast. They do have two drafted goaltenders in Liimi Marinin. He's an Ottawa pick playing for the Kingston Frontenacs. And then you have Joel Blomqvist, who is plays for Karpat in Finland, who's drafted by Pittsburgh. But they're going to be searching throughout the tournament to find that number one goaltender and hope to find some stability. Up front, another Toronto draft pick, Ronnie Irvine, who scored the overtime winner yesterday, the captain of Team Finland. He's a returning player, really creative player. He can finish along the net. He's got some bite. And you'll notice this Finnish team, in 2016, they had less bite, more skill. And that was really counter to what we're used to when it comes to Finnish hockey. They play tough. They make it difficult on their opponents. And they check you hard. It's tough to play against Finland because they eliminate ice. And for skilled teams, you don't have the opportunities that you would against another skilled team when it's, free will, run and gun. I think we'll see more from that team, but you're going to need guys like Ronnie Irvine, like a Brad Lambert, who was selected by, who was draft eligible in 2022. He's going to be number 33. He's a player to watch for me. He's a guy, I mentioned a few guys who are draft eligible so far. Number 3, Brad Lambert, again, Finland, Brad Lambert, sounds like he's in a boy band, but I like the way he plays. He's a guy that is front end speed. He'll bring the puck to the net. He does have some offensive creativity as well, but I like the way he just, when he has the puck on the half wall, he sees the ice very well. Like his hockey IQ is very, very high, and he's playing right now for JYP in Finland. I think he's a guy that can have a big impact on this tournament, because for Finland, he's going to have to be a guy, even though he's getting drafted this year, he's a special talent. He's just turned 18 on December 19th. He's eligible this year, like I said, in the draft. But, playing this year, he's only got 6 points in 24 games, but he's playing in the top division over there in Helsinki. And I think we'll see what he really can do. And for a guy like Lambert, you're playing for a team where you're not getting a lot of ice time. You don't get a lot of opportunities because you're a young kid. Don't try to do too much too soon. Allow the game to come to you, so to speak, and use guys like Hirvonen. Another player that I really like on this team is Casper Samantivo. He's a pick of the Los Angeles Kings. He's going to be number 29. They have some players that can, but it's going to be on guys like Oliver Kapanen. It's going to be on guys like Irvinen, guys like Kalenius. He's another forward who's an LA Kings pick, and Lambert to really drive the offense for this team if they're going to be a factor. And they almost always are. I would be surprised if they don't finish second in this group. Like I said, Germany's not what they it's not what they were last year. The Czechs can make it interesting because they always seem to find a way to make it interesting. But if Hirvonen, if Lambert, if they have solid goaltending, and I like their back end a lot, if they can continue to play well, I think we'll see Finland get to that medal round. And once they get there, they always find a way to medal at this tournament. Over the last 9 World Juniors, Canada has won 3, the US has won 3, and Finland has won 3, if you can believe that. Sweden has not won a gold medal since 2011. The Russians have not won a gold medal since 2012. Finland has been that they're neck and neck with Canada, with the United States when it comes to dominance at this tournament. And that's so impressive that a small nation like Finland, they continue to produce high-end talent. You look at the Carolina Hurricanes, that's all they do. They collect Finnish talent and they win. You got Kokiniemi. You go through that roster, it's littered. Teravainen is littered with Finnish talent. So Finland is always a tough nation. And, that rounds out Group A that'll be playing in Edmonton. But there's also another group, and they're playing in Red Deer. And I was going to start with the United States, and I watched a lot of their game yesterday against Finland. And one thing to note before we get to the teams here, and this is a PSA for myself as much as you guys listening. These IIHF refs call everything, and we have to remember that. There's checks that I don't think are checks from behind that are hits that I don't think are that illegal, and guys get tossed and potentially could get suspended. But a little slash is going to get called. You see the amount of power plays yesterday. I think half of that was telling the players, okay, this is what you can get away with and this is what you can't. And in these tournaments, you really can't get away with much. So for a nation like Canada, you can't take that many penalties. They were undisciplined yesterday, and that's the only reason Russia was really in the game. Russia ended up outshooting them by 15, where if you watch the game, I don't think Russia played that great. Again, they had power play opportunities and they racked up shots. But for Canada, like the US was winning 3-1 yesterday with 5 minutes remaining. They took a 5-minute major. Finland scores twice in the power play. They win the game in overtime. They come back with Ronnie Irvine gets the OT winner. That can happen for teams. The ultimate equalizer, if you're a skilled team playing against a team that doesn't have as much, is be undisciplined. Taking penalties in a tournament like this is turning the ball over in football. You watched the game last night, San Francisco against Tennessee. San Francisco had no business winning that game, but porn star Jimmy Garoppolo gave it to them. He had 2 interceptions. He should have had 4. That you give teams opportunities and they can make you pay. And a nation like Finland is one of those teams. But bringing it back to the other group, let's start with Russia, who Canada played last night. And Russia, it's interesting because Sergei Zubov is their head coach, which, obviously a great player in his own right in the NHL. But Russia should have a strength in net, but it's really puzzling to see if they do, because it's Yaroslav Askarov's 3rd World Junior Hockey Championship. And he gave up 4 goals in the first period last night. Before the game even starts, it seemed like he had 4 behind him. They weren't all his fault. But he has never played well at this tournament. And he plays for SKA St. Petersburg in the KHL, the top league, the top team over there. Again, the 11th overall pick by the Nashville Predators. But I look at him and I just don't see a whole lot of confidence when it comes. I want to like him a lot. But every year I watch him, I kind of just go, well, he doesn't seem set in the net. He never seems comfortable. He's only played 5 games this year. He's got a 201 goals against average with a 904 save percentage, which isn't bad. But he doesn't get a whole lot of opportunity to play. So that could be the problem as well for a guy like Askarov, who I'm sure has aspirations of playing in the NHL. But I think him or Guskov, who played last night, are going to be the goalies. He plays in the MHL, which is the second league to the K for Loko Yaroslava. And I'm interested to see, I think Askarov will get the reins to start. But you talk about this tournament and, Canada plays the Czechs to start. That's not an easy first game, but it's better than for Askarov. They have Sweden day 1. Russia plays Sweden. That's a 5:30 start here in New Brunswick on Sunday, on Boxing Day. If you have a tough start, Russia is not, they will yank goalies, and they play back-to-back. They play Switzerland the next day. So you got to assume that they'll yank a guy, and then they play the Slovaks. They finish against the United States. So they have a tough start and a tough finish to this group. But if you have a tough first day, number one, Russia is so quick to pull goalies. They are so anti Patrick Waugh when it comes to how his tenure ended in Montreal. They will pull you out of that net quicker than you got in it. And for Askarov, it's about finding stability. It's about making those saves early, being comfortable. Because I think if not, we'll see Guskov, and there's even potential of Askarov being healthy, because we've seen that in the past for this Russian team. When it comes to the Russian defense, I like Sabakov. I watching the game last night. He plays for Sparta Moskva. He's number 25. He's a big defenseman. There's also Shakir, and this is a tough name to pull out here, Mukabadulin. He's a New Jersey draft pick, plays for Ufa in the KHL. He's a guy I like a lot as well. I think he'll have an impact on this team. But really, the player to watch, and it's funny because he's a 17-year-old, which is so counter Russia, but it's Matvey Mikov. And he is a 17-year-old kid, and he's being compared to Connor Bedard. He's, they talk about these two going 1-2 in next year's draft. And if you watch last night, he did not look out of place. He did not look like a 17-year-old, oddly enough, being, he did not look like a 16-year-old, being wearing number 17. And he scores a goal last night. I think he's super creative with the puck. He's not a big kid, but he can move. Again, he's already playing for SKA St. Petersburg, draft eligible 2023. He's going to be very important for this team. You look, they got a few draft picks, and Fedor Svechkov, he's a Nashville pick. You also got Kirill Tankov, a Pittsburgh pick. They also, Carolina has 11 picks in this draft. Alexander Pashin, Vasily Ponomarov. He's another guy that number 13 could have a big impact. They're missing a few. Obviously, Podkolzin is too old. He played a number of years for Russia. Over here, he was their captain last year. Simeon Demidov is another guy who's draft eligible this year. So I think we'll see him. He could have an impact on this team. But Russia, they don't have, I think we'll see some of their names. Again, last night, I don't think they played well whatsoever. But again, it's their first game. And it's a different Russia roster because, again, I think Mikov is going to have every opportunity. I think he's going to play a ton. He's not going to be like Bedard. Russia, is a really good team, and I think we'll see players come out of the limelight, but they're coming to the limelight, but they don't have that brand name player when you come into the tournament. Like Puck Colson always was named the last couple of years. He's always at the Saley. They're just like, okay, yeah, there's the big guy, the Vancouver pick, big body, strong. He's going to be playing a ton of minutes. They don't have that guy. Like Mitkov, a 16-year-old, has just as much notoriety as any other Russian forward. Contrasting that to Canada, even the United States, it's definitely not that way here. So again, I think it's going to be interesting to watch early in the tournament how their goaltending goes. Their defense is big. I don't think it's the most mobile defense. They don't have Romanov anymore back there. They're not as mobile as they once were, for sure. Mukhagadulin, Grudinin, they're not fast players. They're not exactly burners. And, Russia, again, they do things their own way. They did not take a single kid from North America. No Russian kids from North America are playing on this World Junior team. Jan Kuznetsov, who was injured with Calgary in training camp, just returned to St. John, would have been a returning player on this team, didn't get asked, didn't get a call. They're taking everybody who stayed in Russia, which we've seen the U.S. do this in the past. I think it's a stupid position. It's not smart. First of all, if they win the tournament, then I'm wrong. You just look at it and say, well, why are you doing, why not just bring your best team, not just award people that stay home? Because for myself, I want to win at all costs. I want to bring my best team. It's not about, okay, who did this, who did that. It's about who can give me the best opportunity to win. And I don't think Russia did this in this tournament, but you know what? We'll see how it plays out for them, and we'll see how they ultimately come out of the gate here and play as we get this tournament going. Let's then go to Team Switzerland. And again, Switzerland did not get to play yesterday. The Czech Republic, they had a player test positive, so we're waiting to hear back if that was an actual positive, false positive, what happens there. But this is another team that doesn't have a whole lot of big skill. That they've been last couple of years. Switzerland's been playing in relegation. Slovakia's been beating them out. They've been playing their teams in relegation, just barely surviving. So they're very much just trying to rebuild, trying to find some great players in this nation right now. That the days of Nito Niederreiter ripping up this tournament and Switzerland coming home with fourth is not where they are right now. But they do have some draft eligible players to keep an eye on. Big 6'5" defenseman, Leon Bichel. He's they're saying right now Craig Button has him as a possible first round pick. So he's going to be a guy to watch. Also for Lorenzo Larandia, he's got 27 points in 29 games for Shawinigan. He went undrafted last year, but they're saying now that they like the look of him. He could potentially be a mid-round pick this year. So using that slight last year to really promote himself this year. But Switzerland, not an elite powerhouse. Again, they're playing in a tough division, which is brutal for them. For a nation like Germany, for even Czech Republic, they get a break playing in the division that they are. You got US, Russia, Sweden in one group with the Swiss and Slovakia. That is a very tough position. That Switzerland versus Slovakia game will be that much more important. Slovakia, on the other hand, has a ton of returning players at this tournament. Starting in net with Simon Latotsky. He plays in the United States Hockey League right now and the USHL. So that to get a goalie to go over and play in the USHL tells you that he's a damn good netminder. He's returning. You got Martin Kropbach, who's playing in the OHL. He's a Los Angeles Kings pick from last season. Roman Faith, he's draft eligible this year. He was 16 last year, so a youngster, but he's coming back, playing again, hoping to get drafted. And they also got the Samuel Nosko, who plays in the WHL, Columbus pick. He is another guy that can have an impact, but they have 12 returning players from last year's team. So they're saying, reading up on these teams, I don't think Slovakia is that bad of a team, but they're going to be playing Sweden. They're going to be playing Russia. They're playing the United States. It's going to be very tough for them to be competitive and to win games. And ultimately, it's going to be up to them to beat Switzerland to get to that crossover round and avoid relegation, which is, of course, the onus of all these teams in this tournament. Let's go to Team Sweden. And for over a decade, Sweden had not lost a game in the preliminary round. That ended last year where they went 2-2 in the preliminary round, and they had a lackluster tournament. And that could continue this year for Sweden, because they don't have as much high-end talent. They don't have players that are going to jump off the page. Two guys that need to be huge for them in this tournament, and it starts in net. It says first starts with Jesper Wallstedt. He's played extremely well. He's got a 182 goals against this year. He went to Mini with pick number 20. They said they thought he'd be a higher draft pick. He played in this tournament last year, but he had a tough tournament, but it went home, got better. He's really played well. And they got a break. They get Alexander Holtz, who was New Jersey's the 6th pick 2 years back now. He's playing as a 19-year-old. He's been playing in the AHL for Providence. Playing in the AHL for New Jersey, because I forget their AHL team, which is weird. But he's playing for New Jersey's farm team. I'm gonna look that up because it's bothering me. And he's played extremely well. He's playing for the Bennington Devils, of course. They used to be Ottawas. He's a guy that has a ton of high-end talent. And New Jersey, they got a ton of guys. Luke Hughes is another guy for the United States that is a New Jersey pick. Obviously, they got Jack. Nico Hischier's played in this tournament. New Jersey's been a team that's been picking high for a long, long time. And they have got a lot of high-end picks from that. And they got to hope that they can hit. But Holtz is a guy that I look at him. I think you saw for Toronto, they had Sandin come back from the AHL. He ripped up this tournament. I think Holtz can do the same thing. He'll be 20 on January 23rd. So went 7th overall in 2020, but he's a guy that is smooth around the net. This is his 3rd World Junior. He had 3 points in 5 games last year, 5 points in 7 games the year before. He needs to be more creative this year for that team, just point blank. And he played 11 games in the AHL. So far this year, he's got 10 points. So almost a point per game in the AHL as a 19-year-old. He's played 6 games with 2 points for New Jersey. But there's still talk if he's going to stay in the AHL the rest of the year, or if he's going to go back and play the rest of the season for Djurgårdens in the Swedish Hockey League. I think he should stay in North America, quite frankly, because I think he'll get looks. New Jersey, like I said, they're a young team. They're not likely going to make the playoffs, but I think they'll play their young kids down the stretch. Tom Fitzgerald knows that, they got a good position here with Utica. He's obviously playing elsewhere. Sometimes in the AHL you can get moved and play for different organizations. He's playing for Utica right now, and he'll get an opportunity later in the season, especially if he continues to put up these numbers in the AHL. So Holtz needs to be the presence for this Swedish team to really make an impact and potentially get into the medal round and be a factor. And then there's also Simon Edwardson, and he's a guy to watch in the back end. He plays for Frölunda. And if you hear Frölunda in this tournament for Swedish players, it means they're good. It's the top team in the Swedish Hockey League. And, I think he's going to be like a Rasmus Dahlin, like a Toronto pick, Rasmus Sandin, where he's going to have free reign to do what he wants. He's going to have the middle. He's going to have the middle of the ice. If he wants to go ahead and he's going to run the power play, he's going to play a ton of minutes. And I wouldn't be shocked if he has a massive tournament for Sweden. He's just a guy that has a ton of talent and great skater, like a lot of Finnish defensemen. So he's 18. He's a 1st-round pick of the Detroit Red Wings. Again, Detroit, another really good pick. But I suspect he will have a lot. Again, playing for Frölunda, he's got 12 points in 24 games. Pretty good season playing for that team, obviously in the back end. But he hasn't played in North America yet, but he's playing really well in Frölunda, and I expect him to play a big role for Team Sweden. Then that brings us to the Americans. And the Americans, I mentioned Russia and their politics, so they don't like to take players from North America. Well, Team USA has 19 NCAA players. They got 3 players from the United States Hockey League, and they only have 2 CHL players. So, they do it themselves. They love to bring their NCAA kids. They like to bring kids from the National Development Program, which I don't blame them. It's a really strong player pool. And quite frankly, I think the NCAA is going to surpass the CHL in a couple of years when it comes to the best route for players to go. We see Kent Johnson. We see top picks like Owen Power. They go the college route. They get to play against men. They enter the league. We'll see how it goes. Jake Sanderson, who went high to the Ottawa Senators last year, is the captain of this team. He plays at the University of North Dakota. Brock Faber, he's a pick of the Los Angeles Kings. He plays for the University of Minnesota. These two, I think, are going to be the 2 most important defensemen. They're very different. Sanderson is a smooth skater. He is just an effortless glider when he has the puck. I think he's a great, moves great, really offensively. I think he will take more of an offensive impact. I don't see him as a guy that's potentially going to lead the tournament in points from the back end, but I think he will contribute in his own way. Getting pucks out of the zone, making smart plays is more of Jake Sanderson to me. I see him as more of a Jacob Slavin, where Slavin has come into his own, started to produce points, but Slavin's better at just playing the role of defenseman extremely well, which is getting less and less prevalent in the game today, where if you don't put up 60 points a year, you're not a good defenseman, which we all know is an anomaly. And Brock Faber he's another guy that I think he's got a really good shot from the back end, but I just think he's a smart defenseman. He's Team USA always has high-end skill, which this year's no different. But Brock Faber and Jake Sanderson, I think, are just going to be pillars to their back end. They're 2 guys that are going to play a ton of minutes, that are going to play penalty kill, play in important situations for this team. But I don't see it being, well, these guys are going to put up great points. I think Luke Hughes can do that. I think I watched, Scott Morrow yesterday, I think a guy for me who plays at the University of Massachusetts, a Carolina draft pick. Even Jack Pert has more of that in him. But I think you look at Faber, you look at Sanderson, they are pillars of the back end. And what they need to do is really help the goaltending. Because like Canada, the US doesn't have a great situation in that. Drew Camasso started the game yesterday. He plays at BU, Chicago draft pick. But then they have 2 guys that are draft eligible, and Dylan Silverstein and Caden Maburko, both playing in the USHL for the Lincoln Stars and for the US development team. So it's really not a lot of experience in net, but I think their defense is strong and need to make up for it. Now forwards, I don't see, Matthew Beniers was a 2nd overall pick last year, plays at the University of Michigan as well. So there you go. Tells you what Michigan can do. Ken Johnson, you got Power, you got Matthew Beniers. They got players at the wazoo on this team. But I'm interested to watch him play, because I watched him yesterday, and I don't see him. Ray Ferraro mentioned on the broadcast that he doesn't see him being a number 1 center. I agree with him. I don't think he's that player, but I do think he's a creative guy. I do think he can be a thorn in the side for teams. A guy that I think will be a game breaker for the Americans is Brett Berard. And obviously he comes from a lineage of great hockey players with his dad, but he's fun. He's a small little guy, but he plays at Providence, a New York Rangers pick, and he's from the Long Island area, so kind of a homecoming for him. But he's feisty. I think he's for a small guy, he's not afraid to get in the corners. And I look at Berard. If I'm him, I watch a ton of Brad Marchand tape, because I think he could be a Brad Marchand in the NHL. And he's got we see him score a goal. Yes, he's got finish. He's got really good hands, but he can be that pain in the ass against teams. He can be that agitator. And I want to see him if he does that in this tournament. You're going to be playing against Sweden, against Russia. You look at playing against Russia, they will take stupid penalties. They love doing it. And a guy like Berard can be the instigator of that chaos. Go in there after whistles, spark it up, get in their face, but also, make them pay for it when they take penalties. another player for me that really stood out yesterday. He was played on the second line, but I think, number 89, that would be Matthew Nyes, second round pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there's another Toronto Maple Leaf plug here, but Toronto drafts good players from they drafted Robertson, who obviously is an American. Nyes was their first round pick last year, plays at University of Minnesota. He looks like a really interesting player. His teammate Chaz Lucius, number 28, also plays at University of Minnesota, a Winnipeg pick. Is it, they have some chemistry together. So I don't think US has the players that jump off the page. Like Redmond Savage is a good player. Lucius, Nyes, Tanner Dickinson is a guy to me that looks like a third line player in the NHL, but can have an impact on this team. Nobody to me stood out yet as just a fireball of talent, but I do think the US can easily win this tournament. But however, in saying that, as we wrap this up, as we await the start of this tournament, I do think Canada is the favorite. And I just look at their team head to toe. I like the US. I mentioned their back end. I like Faber a lot. I like Sanderson, but I look at Gooley and I look at Power. I think they're better than that back end. Goaltending, maybe that's a wash, but Guerin, I can find his game. He can be the goalie of the tournament potentially. And Sweden, Wallstedt could be that guy, but I don't know if they have enough firepower to keep up with Canada when it comes to scoring goals. So that might not be a problem. Again, up front, Nyes looks great for the US. I like Berard, Beniers, a lot of pressure on him to have a big tournament. Mentioned Alexander Holtz for Russia, Mitkov, a youngster. But you look at McTavish, you look at Ken Johnson, you look at Cole Perfetti, Shane Wright, Berard. There are so many different options this team can turn to. And even a guy like Luca Cormier in the back end can jump in and make plays. So I think they are the favorite. I would have the US right behind them, and then the Russians. But it's Finland's right there. They're a sneaky team, and they're going to be tough. They're always tough to play against. But this tournament's so much fun. And like I said, remember, I'm going to recap the games. I'll be in Edmonton in my hotel with the mic. You'll see my face talking about the games. But I'm looking forward to this tournament. It's always fun, and to be in the building is a great privilege, especially right now with everything going on. And it seems like you can't get on a flight to go anywhere. So it's just not flying for a long period of time. It's a really great reprieve to go to Edmonton and get to watch some great hockey over the next 10 days. So I might be on tomorrow to preview the Christmas Day games in the NFL, talk about Christmas in the NBA as well. I plan to do that tomorrow. But if something comes up, then I will speak to you guys in Edmonton. And either way, thank you guys so much for the support. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and have a happy holiday and healthy one to you and yours. Talk soon.